Having worked all my life in and with educational institutions, I cannot accept that institutional learning is dead. If it were, I wouldn't feel the pulse I do when I enter and exit my classroom, engage with students or colleagues' research, connect with students years after their graduation, or represent York abroad in international collaborations. I know from these experiences that I and my institutions are far from dead. This does not mean that the institution itself hasn't changed. It has. Universities are now multiversities. They aren't only represented by bricks or mortar or bound by national borders. Their populations are much more diverse. However, through these changes, they remain institutions of learning. So to me, the question isn't about institutional learning being dead, but rather how institutional learning comes alive. I've pursued two research areas: government policy in international education, and a critical understanding of the study abroad experience for students. In both cases, I'm interested in how and why institutions, whether governmental or educational, partake in the internationalization of higher education. In Canada, almost all higher education institutions have an international education strategy, and several provinces, including Ontario, also have their own strategy. Most strategies provide international study, work, or research opportunities for their students, which are referred to as study abroad for brevity. Study abroad is recognized as a key strategy for internationalization, and in support, universities often set targets to increase student participation rates, increase the number and range of opportunities through signing new agreements, and even provide funding. Be it governmental or individual institutions, there's always been an appreciation of the rich learning that takes place outside our institutions and our country. Study abroad is recognized as important, and I quote, to gain meaningful and hands-on experience with international issues and perspectives, preparing students who are internationally knowledgeable and interculturally competent. Faculties of education more specifically suggest that study abroad gives pre-service teachers knowledge, skills, and dispositions to work in diverse learning environments. It encourages critical reflection in teaching practice, enabling creation of a just and equitable society. Several scholars suggest that teachers, who often represent the white middle-class majority in North America, have to leave the country and live in another culture to, and I quote Merrifield, experience life as an outsider and recognize the unearned privilege of people in the mainstream. Clearly, there's a widespread recognition of the catalytic or transformational aspects of the study abroad experience. Yet, when asked, students express what Dickie McMillan, a York alum, eloquently states. She says, despite the rhetoric of bringing the world to the classroom, students are conditioned from a young age to leave themselves and their culture, their background, and their personal histories out of the academic process. We are told not to use the first person. And even though many of the decisions in the world are influenced by emotional reactions and subjectivities, we are told that rationality is the only legitimate basis for argument. Small wonder that it can be such a struggle to get students to speak with their own voices. They have been taught that what they think, feel, say cannot stand on its own and is not worth listening to. She continues, the separation of human experience from the academic process has very real consequences. One peculiar outcome is that students can no longer recognize themselves in their work. If this is the experience of our students in our classrooms, how are we as institutions supporting the transformational aspects of our students' study abroad experiences? Is international experience alone sufficient for a successful and impactful learning experience? We speak of student engagement, but how do we engage with our students' experience of internationalization? What is our institutional role and responsibilities to students in supporting their meaning-making of and their critical reflection on their international experiences? My own research on study abroad experiences suggests that study abroad provides space for valuable learning opportunities. But for most of these students, these experiences get shoeboxed, left out of their classrooms and delinked from their personal and professional identities once home. Take the case of Yvonne, obviously a pseudonym of a student I interviewed, an Afro-Canadian female who participated in a placement in China. Her narrative experience, she narrates her experience, and in narrating it she says, Students asked me, why is your skin so dirty? Students would just run and scream. I'm thinking, what is this about? It made me realize that I'm black. I never had to think about it in Canada, about the fact that I'm black. Or Nancy, a Caucasian student with Yvonne in China. She said, I felt horrible for her, referring to Yvonne. I didn't know how to make her understand. You can't excuse that, but at the same time, it's just a lack of experience on the Chinese culture. They don't have the same history as we do, making people accept different cultures and different skin colors. Or Fadi, a South Asian Canadian male who went to Hong Kong who was alerted that he would stand out, he says, because of his skin color and ethnicity. And so that was in the back of my mind, but I didn't pay attention to it or focus that much onto it because I was going there for an educational experience. Students are challenged by issues of their physical appearance, cultural representation, language ability, and many other factors that set them apart from the mainstream host society. My research suggests that this experience is fundamentally different for white and non-white students. What is disturbing, however, is though, based on these experiences, no participants critically reflect on Canadian society and their Canadian identities. This limits their relational thinking as to how experiences in Canada connect personally, historically, culturally, politically, or even economically with their host countries. It constrains their ability to debunk the spatial differences we often make between the here and the there, and to build new understanding of difference, power, and privilege, all aspects that are key to their future role as educators. Instead, as for Fadi, students specifically separate issues of race from their study abroad and academic experiences. Sharma states that international educational experiences can do 1,001 things to loosen, shake, disrupt, sadden, regret, enjoy, and instruct. But as the students' narratives powerfully illustrate, they are experiences that cannot be essentialized nor easily translated as they're intrinsically linked with pre-service teachers' changing identities and histories. Rather than viewing what Malevsky and Filion describe as the disembodied abstract student, we must recognize the pedagogical value of each individual's experience as the basis for learning, and engage learners in building an awareness of their own frames of reference. But how and where do we provide spaces for students to understand their study abroad experience? Challenge them to confront difficult discussions on positionality, the construction of race, the complex nature of social oppression, the experience of what it means to be an outsider or the other, so that these experiences can shape their professional practice as future educators. Without such opportunities, study abroad can be ineffective in developing, quote, intercultural sensitivity. In fact, as Che et al. Suggests, it may even prove to be counterproductive, reviving white privilege and colonial thinking. As an academic community and institution, I think we share many strengths. But our classrooms and our institutions are not neutral spaces. They determine who is and who is not given voice, what knowledge is or is not privileged. Bell Hooks reminds us that the classroom remains the most radical space of possibility in the academy. Amy MacDonald argues that individual experience is a crucial element in knowledge production, but left uninterrupted and alone, it simply cannot generate comprehensive knowledge. Policy matters. How policy gets made matters. The policy on the internationalization of higher education must be taken up as a critical issue in relation to larger pedagogical debates on the scholarship of university teaching and learning. Research can influence policy decisions, and here we need a much better understanding of just what international adds to the learning experience. It's only then, I would say, that for students like Nikki, Yvonne, Nancy, and Fadi, that internationalization policy will have some resonance as an academic endeavor linked to the broader goals and purposes of our institution. So returning to the question, is institutional learning dead? I say, far from it. But institutional learning as we know it needs new ways of becoming personal, reflexive, and engaging to be meaningful to whom it matters most, our students. Thank you.